So, Lee, this is really funny. Uh, Recently, we were chatting about how much you enjoyed, how much you had progressed in some of the things that you hadn't practiced in a while in your pool sessions.
Yeah.
And then I thought, that's a really good point. And so I made a short video with a couple of things that I miss because I haven't been to pool sessions in a while. And I thought it'd be really good to talk about a couple of things that you were saying of why you thought the pool sessions were
Yeah.
helpful
So,
for you.
well, I got into some situations like where I was having trouble rolling up, especially in bigger boats. Well, you were there for one of them at the Ontario Symposium. When I was in that wider boat, I was just having trouble lifting my head and like, I don't know if it's psychology or muscle memory because my boat comes around a lot quicker. Um, it's probably a combination of everything. And then also, I think it was probably on top of that a little bit of, and Jared's the one that kind of pointed this out, that it could be a little bit of performance anxiety. Like,
Definitely, because we were in front of people.
yeah, yeah. So,
We were
uh,
supposed to be making it look good.
yeah, yeah, that's right. So the I was just at the realization like I need to practice this more. I need to get in a boat and just focus on that and not other things. Because lots of times I'll do a couple of rolls at the end of a surf session or even during the surf session sometimes, but that's not the same as doing like 150 rolls in an hour or something like that, where you're really like working on different aspects of rolling. And I was trying to work on forward finish rolls, which is I never like try to do that under pressure. Um, and now, actually, I would feel really confident doing it under pressure. I've had probably 5 or 6 pool sessions since the beginning of kind of the colder season here, and my forward finishes now is like pretty polished compared
So
to
let
where
me
it
ask
was.
you, the sessions near you, are you just attending as open session just to have fun?
In the new year, I'm starting a club at the pool where everyone's just going to give the school a little bit to be able to use the pool. And they really are excited about it. And I'm still going to trade off some time with their students teaching um, for some pool time, but it'll be more open for other people to use too.
So it's more of you do teaching in the pool and then you also get some time for yourself as well for doing that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. But what I'm saying is when you show up to do a couple of these things, that's your time to play.
Yeah.
You're
Absolutely.
not demoing, you're not working with people,
I'm
you
working
have,
on specific things that I'm trying to advance. Like make sure I got my butterflies dialed in, and I'll work on things that I use in demos when I am instructing. Um, I'll just work on a lot of the things and just making sure that it's slow. Sometimes I'll video myself and just watch it a couple times just to see what I'm doing to make sure it actually is what I'm trying to achieve.
well, that's the funny thing, especially when I find that when I'm doing it in front of people, or I haven't done it in a while, or I do it in a different boat that's not mine, I cheat all over the place because I'll go back to the basics, and sometimes it doesn't come as naturally because I'm in my head thinking of all these things rather than just butter, right?
Yeah.
But you do it a couple of times, and all of a sudden you go back to that. And I think the camera is very helpful. Sometimes I'm thinking, oh, I'm killing it. Why is it being hard? Turns out I'm just lifting my head every time.
I coach a lot of hockey too, and I like to think about this story. I had a team that was always doing like really well at the beginning of games and like eating way harder, but at the end they would just kind of peter out. And that's how we were practicing. We were going really hard at the beginning of practice and then having a bunch of fun at the end. It wasn't as much physical output necessarily. They could choose if they wanted to put in the physical output at that point or not. The other stuff, it was kind of like forced upon them in a way. The activities were demanding. And I feel like it's the same way with the kayaking stuff. Like one big realization I had after Ontario was like, I'm going to get in a few different boats and practice rolling different boats all the time. So when I'm traveling and working in these situations, I feel confident. And like I got in my Sisu. Now my Sisu is a little bit different than the other ones that I paddle just because I have it fitted for me, which I encourage everyone to do. But it is like it's almost like a cheat, like you say. Like I have it fitting me perfectly, and I actually took some time in some boats that don't fit me perfectly and rolled them as well, just to make sure that I have that skill that I can jump in any boat and do it.
One of the things I usually recommend, which I found not by mistake, but I was whenever I lend my boat out to someone to try and they put the pegs in a different place, I then try rolling for a while without them. Or I'll when I jump back in to demo something, then I'll roll for a while without a skirt. Or maybe try rolling with half a paddle. Just a couple of the things that you never really do, but it's crazy how much it helps for those situations where you might be in someone else's boat, or you might be in a boat and the foot peg breaks, or the skirt comes off, and but you already have a sense of what it feels like to roll in those
And
situations.
all of those skills transfer so well in so many situations. Like the half a paddle is like classic. Like
Crap, I broke my
remember,
paddle. What now?
yeah. Well, and
I
I've
lost
even
my
seen
paddle.
people paddle into the current with their hands and have
Hmm.
the confidence to do that. And I'm like, what? Do you have a hand roll? Like, what's going on? No, that he's like, I got a paddle on the front. I can just grab it if I need it. So there can like, and you want to talk about forcing yourself into a situation where you have to control the boat with your body, just having your hands in the current. When I see people that have videos of that, I'm always quite impressed. It's tough. I wouldn't be posting videos of me doing that yet.
Well, we could do like a bloopers reel. I know that's what mine would be. But at the same time, it's funny sometimes trying to do something like that you wouldn't expect, but someone else can tell you, hey, this would be good practice. You should give it a try. And as long as the setting is good, it might push you to do something you wouldn't do normally. And I think pool sessions is definitely a place where that happens. Like, how often do you do a cowboy? Or how often do you actually do a rescue? Or, but sometimes you're just fooling around in the pool. Or, like, there's games we used to play, like, sit on the back deck and then try spinning your entire body around without falling in. And if you're just going out for a day paddle, you're probably not going to do that because you don't really want to get wet, or maybe the water's cold or whatever. But when you're in a pool, it's perfect to try to do some of those things that are
And
standing up in your boat.
us as instructors, we're always everything's really prescribed in the time that we have with people. So we are doing a bunch of those things as part of our practice, but we're not playing with them
Right.
that same way that you're describing in the pool. And I find like when you're playing, you have that time to be creative, and that's where the real learning, like the foundational psychology stuff happens. You get like a lot of confidence out of it. And just bringing it back to that hockey thing too, like that's what the coaches in the NHL are talking about right now. Like that players need to be more creative and have more time to be creative because we have this mentality like everything has to be structured. Like in our lessons, even when we're teaching kayaking, it's just like bam, bam, bam. Like we have our list that we have to get through, and we're more committed to that sometimes than even like focusing on just playing around and the benefit that you get out of that, like you're describing.
And I think also part of it too is while it's good to practice by yourself, it's also good to practice with other people or even take a lesson, because one thing I find is people get really frustrated with rolling because while you're learning it, they don't realize just how stressful and how hard it is on your muscles. And let's say you have a certain amount of time that you're giving in your all, and then it just declines because you're tired. And sometimes it's good to have someone to tell you, just take it easy. It's failing because you're tired. It's all good. Let's now play or do something else. Because also, like you said, it's in your head and it's confidence level too. And if you're tired and it's not really working, that doesn't mean you're sucking. It means you're tired. And so many things need to click for a role to work or some of these things to happen.
Yeah, James was actually helping me in the summer a little bit with those forward finish rolls. We were just playing around at Thetis Lake, and he said a couple things. And that bit of time I spent with him, that's what I was using as my foundation in the pool. And I did a
Right.
few of the things that he told me to do, and it was like Oh, bam, bam. He's like, just when you're at a dock or in a pool, like he showed me what to do. I was trying to do it off his kayak, and his kayak isn't balanced. It wasn't working very well. It was just tough to do. And he said, try it. And like when I went into the pool session, I kind of went with that information that I took from being with my friend and transferred it into like working on building that skill set when I had time on my own. And I could just be free without, because I think it's a balance between the two too. Like if you have somebody telling you what to do constantly, it can actually sometimes make it more difficult.
I agree, and it could be more frustrating too. But sometimes someone saying a little thing, like I remember I struggled with a reverse sweep for a long time, and then my buddy Tim, I sent him a video of me struggling with that reverse sweep, and he goes, just focus on that knee, bring that knee to your nose. And next weekend I went in the pool and it just clicked. All I needed was for one person that knows what they're doing to look at it and say, you're missing your knee drive.
Yeah.
Bring the knee to the nose, and all of a sudden it came right up. Where the last week I was struggling and hurting my shoulder, which I shouldn't have been doing. With one comment, all of a sudden it was an easy thing to do, and it was like seamless. So
Yeah.
I think it's a mix of the two, of having the time where you can practice, but also having someone that can give you a little bit of feedback or input that you can then work on for a while too.
Absolutely, yeah. My time in the pool would not have been as effective if I didn't have that time with James, even though it was like probably a few weeks before, because it was before he left to go to Mexico. And uh, I'm glad that I had it because those few little things, like you say, just a couple little things to focus on that they can pinpoint in 2 seconds, gives you the keys to what you need to work on.
And I also find it funny that sometimes something really small could take a couple of weeks to really develop. Like I've been in situations where I'll work with someone and they say, "Okay, well, next time you do this, make sure your shoulders are completely flat." But I can't get it automatically. I need to work at getting those shoulders flat on the water, let's say, or for like the balance brace, right? That
Yeah.
was one of my biggest obstacles was because I'm not very flexible. When I would twist and try to get both shoulders really flat on the water, it took me a while of working at it and really getting to that point. I couldn't just snap it on. But having someone telling me that, then I was able to work towards it over time,
Mm.
which was really good too.
Yeah, and those types of things too. Like I always think of things that I can do off the water, to help with that stuff.
Well, I always talk about doing stuff off the water and then I suck at it. Things get in the way and I haven't
To
done
do
it.
another 21-day challenge
We should. It
in the
was
new
good.
year, right after Christmas.
Let's do it. Actually, my wife and I are thinking of doing, we're going to do P90X again.
Ooh,
We've done it a couple of times, and every time we did it right before our
good.
wedding. It was so good. It was really good. But you know what it is? More than it doesn't matter what you're doing. It was the consistency. We were doing it pretty much every day.
Yeah, I've told you, I think, before about this little thing my friend Brent Hammond and I do, where it's like a point a day. Yeah,
Yes.
and like I've stayed pretty committed to that. Like yesterday, even I got out on the bike for an hour and went for a ride just to make sure that I was doing my thing.
Can
The
you
day
talk
before
about it for
that,
a
I was,
sec?
yeah,
Explain
sure.
what it is.
Yeah, so we get a point a day. You can miss days, but you have to make them up. You can only make up two a week. So you have to do like if you start to get behind, it takes a few weeks to catch back up. The most I've ever been behind is 10 days, so it took me 5 weeks to catch that up of doing two extra a week. When you're doing two extra a week, it can add up to be a lot because then a 1 hour workout becomes kind of a 2 hour. But like when I say workout, I use that term kind of loosely because it's either an hour and a half of walking or just like light activity or 45 minutes of more of an intense activity. So if you went to the gym for a full like arms or like 45-minute focused workout, that would count. But if you played hockey for an hour on a team where you're sitting on the bench and back on and stuff like that, that'd be 1 point. So every day you try to get 1 point, and we're on day like 2,800. So we've been doing it for years. And we kind of hold each other accountable for it too, which is kind of good. But like these pool sessions and stuff, I try to make them enough time that I will count them for my point for the day.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just getting out there and doing something, like you say, like just that pushing yourself to do one thing, make yourself better. And it doesn't necessarily have to be paddling, but it could just be like yoga. It could be
Mhm.
like for me, I've hurt my knee in the summer and I've been going to physio. So my day when I go to physio, that's my day. They get me to do some hard work with my knee it can be a bit painful. Um, but it's helping.
Do you have any goals or anything you're working on right now in the pool sessions until?
Yeah, I've still been working on that forward finish, and I've been working on the reverse sweep.
Okay.
So, like, trying to get that. And what I'm noticing is my body's at a position. I need somebody to watch it. I need a friend to
So
come. And
so record it next time.
I'll
I'll
send it to you.
yeah,
Yeah.
send it to me. Make sure. So this is one of the biggest tips I try to give with. I'm sure James mentioned it many times. If you're putting pressure on your shoulder, stop. Do not muscle up. Like let's say, are you righty or lefty?
Um,
Like
I'm gonna go
which
from. I'm gonna go from this side.
whatever your outside arm is, if you feel any pressure on the shoulder, stop. Do not muscle up on that shoulder. That
That's
means you're
always what
not.
I'm trying to do.
So then you need to use other stuff. Don't put pressure on. That's how I hurt my shoulder doing that, and that's where Tim was seeing that I wasn't. I was relying on my arms and not my leg drive.
Mm,
So record it, and we'll take a look. But if you put pressure on your shoulder, stop, drop back, and do it again.
yeah. All right. I'll,
Because you could really hurt. Like I was out for I think like 6, 9 months. It
I don't
hurt
want
a
that. I don't
lot.
want that. I don't
No,
want
that's a tough one. You're pretty much just putting there for assistance, but not for leverage. Like the rest of your body is doing the role, and that kind of just gives you a little bit of support so you can come up.
that. Yeah. I kind of get the idea of it, and I can see how that forward finish was the next step to it.
It's a good
Um,
one.
yeah, I want to get it. I know Jared's been working on it too. Um,
Awesome.
one thing that I was thinking of that I kind of slipped my mind was that idea of muscle memory, and you talking about how you don't get it always on the first day, and that you need to take breaks in between. I teach a lot of kids sports, and muscle memory is not developed from doing things one time properly. Like you have to do it a lot of times properly before, but your body knows and your brain knows when you do things right. And I think kayaking is a great example of that because when you do something right in a kayak, it feels like you said butter. That like it's butter. It feels like butter. Like even a roll, anything feels so easy when you're doing everything right. And your brain registers that, right? You need your brain to register that a lot of times to make it the go-to or the default. It's kind of like your computer going to the same kind of web browser. Eventually, it realizes that's what you're doing, and it says, "Okay, I'm just going to go to that web browser for you whenever you want." Your brain is working the same way, where it's saying, "Okay, I'm going to default to this," but in the beginning, it's going to default to what it thinks is the best thing. And until you really ingrain that muscle memory, which takes a number of sessions in most cases, in my experience, I'm not one of those people that just pick things up the first try and I can just watch you and then do it. I wish I had that gift. But I feel like there's like 1% of the population that can just immediately do things perfectly, any type of movement. And I actually think that it makes me a bit of a better teacher in a way because of that. Because I have to work at things a little bit and I have to understand how it works and I have to be able to not only get the muscle memory, but I kind of have to be able to analyze it myself. Um, we've got some friends that love to do that.
Yeah. And the other thing too is tied to that. I find that that's why I like recommending to people to at some point as a learning something work with someone that knows what they're doing because over that long time if you commit something to muscle memory but it's wrong then if you need to relearn it, you need to break that down and learn something again. And so sometimes it's really good, at least early in the process, to have someone give you
Have you ever
some of
lost your
that.
role and had to work back to it?
I've lost my hand roll.
Yeah. And had to work
And
back to that. So like you had that muscle memory.
I have the movement. What I lost is the flexibility because I'm not doing it anywhere as often.
Yeah.
So I had gone when I was doing yoga more often and I was practicing all the time. What I did is I was working on my muscle memory. I started with Greenland paddle, shorter, shorter, half a paddle, shorter, Norsac, and then I was able to eventually get to a hand roll. And then when I stopped, all of a sudden that just started going away.
Mhm.
And instead of working my way towards it, my body's like, oh, I got this. And then it just fails and fails. And, then you get in your head, and I can't believe I'm doing this. I used to have this. Where is it? But sadly, I just need to put up with the fact it's probably going to take some time to get that flexibility back, to get back to it.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes you like for me, I've had to like when switching boats and stuff, um, switch my speed on my roll and stuff like that. You might have seen the video of us roll that triple. We had to like slow things down to do that, like
Big time.
count everything out and then let the boat come around. And for that one, like you really do have to break your muscle memory down. Like you have to like tell your body to stop doing what it normally does. And I even find that with the smaller boats that you can just kind of whip right underneath you. Um, it happens so quickly and it feels so easy, but then when you go to a bigger boat, it just feels a little bit tougher.
For that, I like doing it without a skirt. That's always a really good practice because you have all that extra stuff and you just have to slow things down. But another one that's fun is doing a re-enter and roll. But before you roll back up, you put the skirt back on. So then you roll back up with a lot of water still in the cockpit, and that's awesome because you have all that extra water sloshing around in the cockpit, and like you said, it makes your boat feel completely different.
That would be like rolling a loaded kayak, right? You just a
Exactly.
second or two slower.
Hmm. Which is really good practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
We
I
do it
remember I
we
had
do it
I
on our courses. We'd
good.
get them to run like do, and we explain it that way too. Like when you do this, it's going to be a bit slower. Yeah.
I had someone reach out with a question saying, so I learned how to roll, but I'm going on this trip and it's a fully loaded kayak. What should I try rolling it at some point? And I said, absolutely. See if you can seal off everything you can. So practice not on your trip because you don't want to get all your gear wet. Maybe just get whatever you can, put them in like float bags or live
Potatoes. I
bags.
heard potatoes are good to put in
Really?
kayaks.
Well, the other thing I was thinking is just taking, um, like canteens, like the water bags. You
Yeah,
can fill
yeah.
some
For
water bags,
us.
throw them in the hatches, and try that. And then another thing I heard too was maybe putting Velcro or something like that at the bottom of your um, hatches, and then Velcro on the bottom of water bags. And if they stay on the bottom of the kayak, if for some reason you're able to keep it when it's upside down, like whatever's heaviest, if it's on the bottom, it will help with the roll too.
Oh, makes
So
sense. Some
that's
ballast.
exactly
Yeah.
that could assist you. So if you're packing your stuff, put your heavier stuff on the bottom, then pack lighter so it keeps it on the bottom, and then when it switches,
Yeah. The weights at the bottom. Makes sense.
exactly. Yeah, but Lee, thank you. This was fun.